Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about two very important stories. The first one is about an interview given by the DGISPR to Global Village Space, and he did mention about a couple of very important things regarding the CPEC and the kind of threat the Indians are posing to it. And he also talked about a couple of very important areas, and also spoke about the dossier that was presented to P5 by the foreign minister and later was presented to the United Nations Secretary General. So in the second half, we'll be talking about the Afghan peace process. As they say that the Afghan breakthrough deal is really considered something very important, and on top of that, it is believed that it's a very significant milestone in peace process that has been reached. That was stated by Zalmay Khalilzad. But before we start about the second topic, let's hear what the DGISPR had to say.
Massive effort by the Indian side to kind of create some kind of disturbance inside Pakistan, especially in the border region. When this dossier came out, this was frankly a vindication of what Pakistan had been saying for so long. It gave all the proofs, evidence of Indian government, India as a state sponsoring terrorism inside Pakistan. And it has been taken very seriously by the international community. The world has taken note of it. The world is talking about it. And despite India's best efforts, there's been a lot of objective analysis of what's being said, and I think the objectivity of the debate around this dossier, the contents of this dossier at the international level is a major plus, and we are going to take it forward from here.
All right, that was an interview given to the Global Village Space, in which the DGISPR very categorically mentioned that what exactly is India is doing all along the borders, even when you talk about the LOC or the use of the Afghan soil against Pakistan, the kind of objectivity they have in their mind to destabilize Pakistan. The second soundbite is also pretty important and is related. Let's hear that out.
We keep having these conversations with the Afghan leadership. There's a proper mechanism about it, and frankly, we've always acknowledged that the Afghan government has capacity issues, because of that, we've never really blamed the Afghan government for what's happening from the Afghan soil. So we keep sharing this information with them, and it's a regular thing. And similarly, the kind of information that we've revealed in this dossier, that has also been shared at the appropriate levels. So and connected to this, since this particular zone is also being used to target the CPEC.
That was the DGISPR, very categorically mentioned about what India is doing and the kind of designs they have to destabilize Pakistan. Now, to talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right, is Yasir Janjua Saab, who's a security analyst. Thank you very much, Janjua Saab, for your presence. And we'll also be talking to Hassan Khan Saab, who's an expert on Afghan affairs. Khan Saab, thank you very much for your time as well, Hassan Saab. And we'll be also talking to Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab over the telephone. But first of all, Yasir Saab, you heard what the DGISPR very categorically mentioned, the kind of threat the Indians are posing to CPEC, and again, the kind of interest they have in destabilizing the region, and in particular Pakistan. He's talking about the use of Afghan soil. He's talking about the kind of agenda or the objectivity they have in their mind. It's a state-sponsored terrorism primarily, sir. Let's start off from that.
I'm just trying to think of the right example, but if I can give that, when the candle is just about to burn out at the last end, it's burning the most. This is what it's happening with the Indians right now. They are dying their own battles in every field and sphere. May it be with the Chinese, may it be in the Kashmir, or may it be their policy that billions and billions of dollars that they allocated for the Afghan effort, for the western border of our western borders effort to destabilize Afghanistan and to destabilize Pakistan. This Afghan peace agreement is going to be a nail in India's coffin. Their diplomacy and their tactics in India, in Afghanistan will come to an end. So from every single direction, now what they wanted to do, they had nothing left over. They are trying to do something about CPEC, to destabilize or tell the world. It's very easy because they can't. It's a freedom struggle in Kashmir that's going on.
Yep.
So if they don't call it a terrorist struggle, they can't be heard around the world because terrorism has become a buzzword. So all along, in every single issue, India is losing its battle. So what you find here is Indians losing ground everywhere. May it be any of the four or five issues we've talked about. So that's why they've resorted to this fifth generation warfare, so that they can try and use all possible means. But God willing, Pakistan is successful and coming out successful in every. Today, the agreement between the two factions of Afghanistan
Yep.
is a major milestone. Indians would not be sleeping very happily tonight because this is not what they wanted. They wanted a continuously destabilized Afghanistan because that served their interests.
Because a civil war-like situation inside Afghanistan suits India. That's
you
when
go.
they can look after their affairs inside Afghanistan and kind of, hit us as well.
And this is what DG ISPR has been telling you in this interview, that this is what India is trying to do. But we are well prepared. We are well prepared. Our only aim is, and he's rightly pointed out in the interview, that we have to keep that balance of power in the region. India is trying to destabilize that balance of power. If that balance of power in South Asian region is destabilized, this is not good for the entire region, not for India and Pakistan. The entire South Asian region and extends to Central Asia or the northern part. So the entire region becomes destabilized. This is what India is trying
All
to
right,
do.
sir. Let's hear from Khan Saab. Now, there are a couple of very interesting stories. One is that it is generally believed that Trump has ordered the withdrawal of the troops by the 15th of January, 5 days prior to his, when the new president will be taking over. And secondly, another big story is about this breakthrough deal. Look at Zalmay Khalilzad. He seems to be very excited. I think credit really goes to him also for his effort. Pakistan has done brilliantly its job, as well as a couple of other countries. And I'm sure the domestic stakeholders inside Afghanistan, this deal means a lot to them. Your take, Khan?
Thank you very much, Faisal. I think you rightly mentioned that this is a historic deal after the one which was brokered between the Taliban and the American, the US government. And Pakistan was, I think, Pakistan played a vital role in making Taliban sit with the US administration and then carrying on the whole process. So this, what was signed yesterday, I think the news were there for more than a week, and there were some reports of being sabotaged. Especially, people were accusing the current Afghan president, President Ghani, when his spokesperson also mentioned, and he said that the government is not creating any hurdle, but the government is trying to make certain things clear. So I think this is no doubt. Afghan have proved that they are really interested in peace. Both the parties, the Taliban and the government side, they want to negotiate, and they carry in this I think very cumbersome to set with the party who is enemy to each other, and they talk for months and they reach a certain agreement, despite the fact that there was a lot of pressure on both the sides, because during this period since September 12 onward till date, violence in Afghanistan, I think that increased manifold. There were casualties from all corners of the country, especially the center. Kabul was hit. It was attacked several times, and I think the last one when the Kabul University was attacked by the terrorists. So despite these hurdles, both the Afghan side, the Taliban and the government delegation and the other, they keep on talking and they keep on reaching an agreement, a 3-page agreement, where I think this is the first, but this is a very crucial one. I think it explains
The
going
rules
to
and
the
the
next
procedures primarily, yeah, of engagement, yeah.
rules and the procedures, and it set the framework that especially the next when they are coming up to the agenda, and particularly the first item on the agenda is the ceasefire. So everyone, I think, no doubt, as you mentioned, Zalmay Khalilzad and the Afghan leaders, they are welcoming it. So I think this is a very a prime step toward a peace project in Afghanistan, and no doubt, as mentioned by my friend Yasir, that Pakistan has played and is being playing a very crucial role, and he rightly mentioned that this Indian things that they have started increasingly using the Afghan territory, are increasing violence along the LOC. It is due to these factors that the Indian project to isolate Pakistan, that project is definitely failed now. One, CPEC is attracting the international community. It is getting Pakistan engaged in the region. Pakistan is getting a central stage due to the CPEC. It is an economic project. It is a connectivity project. And then this Afghan project, which Pakistan has been vigorously pursuing it to bring peace to Afghanistan. So I think these two projects are very crucial. As you mentioned, the Rija ISPR interview, where he referred to both the things. And then this Indian, what we call it, this their frustration. So this, if the peace project in Afghanistan is successful, only then I think you heard DG ISPR saying that we are sharing these things with the Afghan leadership, and we are sure that it is not the Afghan leadership who are involved in it. It is not the
Now,
Afghan
Hassan
government
Khan
is
Sahib,
involved
another
in it.
important point is, if you look at the recent, or rather the first visit of the Prime Minister to Afghanistan, Mr. Imran Khan was there with a very high-level delegation, held very interesting talks out there, and everything seemed to be working well for both the countries. Whether you talk about trade, Razak Daud was there, so we are talking about the bilateral trade as well as multilateral trade. You're talking about the Afghan security, you're talking about the peace. Now, I think the biggest development would be if they can break through a deal where there is an absolute ceasefire. This is exactly what this particular story also tells us, that the procedures, the basic way to move forward, this is what has been decided in this 3-page very comprehensive report. My point now is that visit, for some reason, of the Prime Minister been able to sort of come up with these kind of results? Hassan?
Day before yesterday, we were having an interaction with the Afghan ambassador in Islamabad, and he was all praised for the Prime Minister visit and saying that it was a historic visit. And I put a question to the ambassador, the Afghan ambassador, that in which context you are saying that it is a historic visit. He said that the way the Prime Minister interacted with the Afghan leadership, there was quite frankness and there was openness from both the side. The Prime Minister, it was for the first time that a Pakistani Prime Minister, a Pakistani delegation was greeted in Kabul with a public holiday in the capital. All the thoroughfare, the streets and the prominent buildings were decorated with the Pakistani flag and with the portraits of the Prime Minister along with the President of Afghanistan.
Banners and everything,
I think he was hugely welcomed by the Afghan, and it was due to the fact that the Afghans have realized that Pakistan is playing a crucial role and has already played a crucial role by bringing Taliban and US together, and I think structuring, orchestrating a peace agreement between the two. So they were definitely expecting that from Pakistan, and the Pakistan has rightly responded. Pakistan's top priority is to bring down the violence. Reduction in violence is Pakistan's major demand from the warring faction in Afghanistan. And this is what the Afghan leadership want. This is what the Afghan people want. So in this, during the visit of Prime Minister to Kabul, there was interaction on the sideline between both the leadership of the intelligence agencies. APEPS was revived vigorously. The Razak Dawood was there in Kabul day before the Prime Minister visit to Kabul, and a lot of I think facilities have been granted to the Afghan. Online visa for the first time. Pakistan is the first country which is offering online visas to the Afghan. Pakistan has opened a number of border points right from Angurada, Ghulam Khan to Khadlachi to Torkham to up to Chaman, and more are being open. And Pakistan is, I think, offering each and everything to facilitate, to economically revive the Afghan, to provide them facility, to provide them corridor for their export, to facilitate them in their imports, etc. So I think this is the time Pakistan is regaining its position, which it has lost during the last a number of years, and which India has filled that vacuum. Now Pakistan is taking a central stage in Afghanistan, especially in Kabul. And I'm observing the Afghan media. I think the animosity the venomous which it was I think against Pakistan, the Afghan media, that animosity has been drastically reduced. The social media,
Now, that's a very
there is no
important
more
area. Yeah, yeah.
that huge anti-Pakistan rhetoric on the social media, that has been reduced. The Afghan leadership, now they are talking good of Pakistan. So I think the government during the last several months or maybe a year, it has worked a lot to win the hearts and minds of Kabul, of Afghanistan, of the people of Afghanistan. But this project of the peace project, and everybody is looking toward Pakistan. There are a lot of expectation from Pakistan.
All right.
But Pakistan is,
All right.
yeah.
I think Hassan Khan is one of those journalists, I mean, who's been to Afghanistan the maximum times, and he's interviewed almost all the high-ups out there. Now, the kind of news he has shared, I mean, the anti-Pakistan rhetoric, I mean, that needs to be countered. Unfortunately, again, the dirty role of India comes in.
I have just one thing to add, and I have to warn you to keep you on the alert. Look, the agreement between the two factions in Afghanistan, the main point around what they are talking about is reduction of violence. Because previously, when the Taliban agreed with the US, they agreed they will not do attacks on the US forces. They did not agree to the
On Afghan forces.
on Afghan forces. But now this is what they're talking about. Who stands to benefit if still there are more attacks? And I said that in the past as well. Be watchful. Afghanis, be watchful. Pakistanis, obviously, Pakistan can only sit and watch, but I'm giving this message to the Afghanis. There will still be more attacks, actually, and India will try to
Carried out by whom? The non-state actors?
non-state actors sponsored by India, so that Taliban get the blame and this peace process gets derailed. You understand this fine line, what I'm trying to say? This agreement, after this, there will be attacks to blame the Taliban. Taliban will not be doing this. Non-state actors or the ones sponsored by India will be doing it, but the blame will go to Taliban because they somehow want to derail this process. And on the visit of Imran Khan, after many, many years, for the first time, it is the Afghan government which has invited Imran Khan or the Prime Minister of Pakistan to come and visit. And as Hassan was saying, they celebrated the visit with a closed holiday and Pakistani flags all around, because they wanted to really, now they were,
of the Prime Minister.
they
Khan?
were ready to welcome the Pakistani Prime Minister. And the results you've seen, in a matter of days after that visit, you see on the table, Taliban and
Absolutely.
Afghanistan on
But this
on
is
the
not
same
what the Indians would like to see.
So that's why they have to be watchful. They have to be careful.
Sir, I've been joined in by Rahimullah Yusufzai Saab. Assalamu alaikum ji.
Walaikum salam.
Yusufzai Saab, thank you very much for taking out your time and talking to PTV World. Now, I'm sure you must have gone through the story regarding the peace deal or the peace process that has been reached. Everybody is talking very positive about it. People are appreciating the role of Pakistan. Now, in your experience, how do you see this? I mean, one of our guests, Janjua Saab, says that maybe it won't be the Taliban attacking the forces. There would be attacks, and those would be carried out by the non-state actors sponsored by India. So, your take?
You know, first I would like to say that these talks were deadlocked, and they have been talking for about 2.5 months. So in that context, we can say it is a breakthrough, it's an achievement. But in the larger context, in the broader perspective, it's not a major gain because, you know, if they took so much time on trying to finalize the basic framework or the rules of procedure or as the code of conduct, which they are calling it, then you can imagine how tough and how difficult it will be to make any progress on the substantive issues like the ceasefire, like the amendments in the Constitution, like the issue of the caretaker government. I think these issues will now be discussed. At least a way has been opened to discuss the more important issues, the agenda, which has not been, being discussed right now. Regarding the attacks, there have been attacks, even when the U.S. and Taliban were talking for 18 months, and even after the Doha deal in February, there have been attacks. There will be attacks now also. There are spoilers, state actors, non-state actors. They will continue their game. But let me tell you, the talks were not stopped. They did not break down. So I believe that the talks will continue. There will be hurdles. There will be spoilers. But I think all sides are now determined to continue the peace process.
All right. So, I mean, you believe that, it's a good breakthrough, but you shouldn't be depending totally on this. And you said there could be spoilers, there could be non-state actors. Now, there is a story in which they've said that Donald Trump has ordered that the troops should be back by the 15th of January. Now, that is almost 2 weeks, or rather 6 weeks from now. The point is that a possible kind of a scenario, sir? Do you believe that that could practically be happening, or it's just a foolish thought of the US president?
I think that that decision has been taken by a president who still has some time left in office. These troops will be withdrawn by 15th of January, while Trump will stay in office until 20th of January. So I think that will happen. I don't think Biden can stop it, or he's going to try and stop it. But the U.S. still will have about 2,000 troops in Afghanistan, especially air power, which is the key, the most critical element of the war. They still have some troops from the other NATO members. I think the total is about 12,000. So there's not a whole scale withdrawal. There will still be troops. They can play a role. Biden also wants to keep some troops, after the May 2021 deadline to fight against terrorism. And I think he will try to renegotiate with the Taliban. He will also like Taliban to reduce violence. So issues will come up. But I think primarily the agreement will not be broken down. It will not be scrapped by Biden. I think he will try to implement it with some amendments, and he will try to seek some concessions from Taliban.
All right. Thank you very much, Yousafzai Saab, for your input. Now, another very important, since Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab was saying that even if 2,000 US troops and let's say 12,000 NATO troops are there, that's a big number. And obviously now we're talking about the high-tech systems and everything. You don't need 20,000 people to, do what now I think 200 can do. So the Australian war crimes, now that is something very important being discussed. And obviously this is not only the Australian army that has done this. I still remember those videos were made by the American soldiers having beer and chocolates and shooting. And unbelievable that no human can do that. Now, when you hear this kind of a story that, your first kill, a human kill, I mean, as if you're doing hunting or something. This is the crazy phenomena, sir. I mean, how do you see this aspect? You yourself have served in the armed forces, sir. Can you even imagine that worst case scenario is the Indian army? I mean, you can't even shoot the Indian population like this.
Let me tell you this. No professional military in the world would allow something like this to happen as a matter of official policy. You find these kind of isolated incidents happening around the world in almost every army. You will not come across an example where nothing happens. There are all kinds of rogue people in the uniform. However, what needs to be done by the states, by the countries, by the militaries, by their leadership, is to take stern measures that that does not become a widespread policy or a widespread routine that keeps repeating itself. These kind of violations and people taking their own, going out of the realm of their duty or their powers, it is not unusual, it is not unheard of, and it's not going to stop, by the way. However, it should be condemned at every corner. As far as the Indian Army is concerned, they and the Israelis are the worst in these things. Their human rights records are the worst because they are both the occupation armies, and there is no system. You remember a few years ago when there was a major of the Indian Army, he tied a guy in front of the jeep and
you know, yeah, I saw that video.
Was taking around the streets of Srinagar. Responsible states do not allow that. You will not come across one single video like that from Pakistani army. This is what a professional army is about. So the Indian army and the Israeli army are the exceptions where they do this and the state doesn't do anything about it.
But what about Australians?
Well,
What about the human rights? I mean, why do they have these kinds of double standards?
you see,
Killing civilians, even children.
I mean, it was, to be honest, I wasn't really prepared, and I was shocked to hear about Australians, something happening on their side, because they have a very high human rights record.
Yeah.
Although, for those who live in Australia, you ask them, now, unlike before, racial discrimination has become very high. And it's all across the globe, actually. Nationalist movements. I've myself, for a very short while, few months, maybe a year or so, lived in Poland. Poland was a very a society where they were welcoming immigrants.
Yeah.
Now the nationalist government of Poland would not let any immigrant survive there. So
I mean,
Australia
they have made a
is-
policy like Hungary,
yeah. So
Poland for that matter.
in
yeah.
Australia also, this global wave of nationalism is bringing these kinds of things. Although the rare example is of New Zealand, which is next door to Australia, and they have after the attack on the mosque last year, the Prime Minister won praise from every single person around the world
yes.
for her response. If the Australians stood up like that, they would have won praise.
It's
But
not,
they
I
are-
mean, I still remember a couple of Australians issued very stupid statements also regarding the killing. I mean, not calling him a terrorist and, you
Yes.
know, saying that maybe something is wrong with his brain or something. But I think hats off to the Australian Prime Minister. The lady is brilliant in the way she handled the issue, the way it was.
the New Zealand Prime Minister.
And New Zealand, sorry, the New Zealand Kiwi Prime Minister. And the best part was that the motorcyclists and all these people were guarding the mosque. And I was surprised to see that. Look at them. I mean, we should learn so much from these people.
And by the way, I mean, although this will distract us away from, I was only reading today, she's actually trying to cool off the tensions between China and Australia and the rest of the countries in the region. She's the one actually, she's taking a leadership role. So this is what is required. Australia somehow is not doing its bit. Australia is one country
Because Australia
which,
most likely
which
is towing the
was
line of
going
the
into
Americans
Quad
and the
group.
British. That's exactly what they always do.
Australia actually was being part of that Quad group, which is teaming up. Australia stands to lose the biggest if it goes in the other group against China. And the Kiwis have been smart to think about it, that we can't ignore China. Australians should think about their interests first. So human rights has to be very key. But Australia somehow, maybe with this change in the Washington DC, maybe the
Things would be
global
different.
leaders.
Because I think, sir, this rightist extremist mindset prevails everywhere. Starting from USA, you talk about France, you talk about Australia, you talk about India,
But
you
this-
talk about Britain. I mean,
This extremism only became more and more prevalent after Donald Trump came in the US.
Yeah, he
You then
created a
found it
scenario like
happening in France and rest of the countries. Before that, even if they were extremists, they wouldn't talk about it. Now they've been talking openly in last 4 years. So we hope that with Joe Biden coming in, things will cool off, as he's been talking about.
let's see and let's hope. Now, coming to you, Hassan Khan, since we were talking about this very tragic incidents, I mean, these incidents that took lives away, killing of civilians, making them run and then shooting at them. This is something which Afghan people actually know about. There were so many videos which were viral earlier as well, in which the actual intentions of those soldiers were shown. Whether you call them that they're mentally sick or something, I mean, just imagine the kind of tortures these Afghan people have gone through. Whether you talk about Guantanamo Bay or you talk about a couple of other huge setups they have erected inside Afghanistan. Extreme human right violations, sir. But unfortunately, and you know, forget about this sort of killing, bombings on madrasas, on weddings, I mean, taking away lives of hundreds and hundreds of people, entire population of the villages, I mean, just you exactly know what I'm talking about. And don't you think these issues of human rights, these should be presented out there? People should know what's going on inside Afghanistan, other than what their domestic issues are all about.
Look, Faisal, I think we need to appreciate the Australian government. That is the first government out of, I think, 30 plus countries which were involved in Afghanistan. They have the guts to publicly accept that their military or their troops have done atrocities or a human rights violation in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, for the last 40 years almost, whether it was the Soviet army, whether it was even the Mujahideen, the so-called Mujahideen who were fighting in the name of Islam, I think right from that era, then 9/11 enters, and after 9/11, troops of, I think, around the countries, dozens of countries, more than 30 countries, they were in Afghanistan. And we were saying right at that time that most of them were having the license to kill the Afghans. It was too easy just to name a person, give a dog a bad name and kill it, was the policy which was pursued not only by the Australian but by the other forces also, whether the American, we haven't forgotten that mother of all bombs which was dropped in Afghanistan.
Yes.
And all type of weaponries were tested on the Afghans. And there was the killing of Afghan, it was something normal. It was something, a routine matters for the international the international troops. So unfortunately, really, but Afghans have this, they are in a state of war. Since 1979, they are facing these things. They're facing these atrocities. So it has become just what we call it, the world is completely desensitized toward the human rights violation that have been taking place in Afghanistan for the last 4 decades. And for the first time, that's why I'm saying that we have to appreciate the Australian government, that at least they come up with the proper investigations and with a report, and they established that their troops have done these acts of human rights violation in Afghanistan. So that's what we haven't forgotten the stories when in the north people were just packed up in the containers and they were killed. We haven't forgotten as you rightly mentioned in your statement, that wedding parties were attacked, madrasas were attacked, schools were attacked. So there is no place
Even
in Afghanistan
hospitals,
where we
if you
see
remember what happened in the northern
Yes.
side, when a C-130 practically attacked a
Yeah.
hospital.
The hospitals were, and these were not done by as you say, the state actors, by the non-state actors. These were rightly done by the state actors. And you haven't forgotten the drones which were being operated from 7 seas away, the proverbial 7 seas away, and they were killing the Afghans. The Afghans were just running for their lives. So this is very unfortunate. But this is a ray of hope now that the Afghans are now, for the first time, I think why I am calling this agreement between the Taliban and the Afghan leadership as a historic and a major breakthrough. The reason is that during the last 40 years, this is the first time that the Afghan leadership themselves, they are sitting with no other person, with no foreign person, with no other country, and they are talking about peace in Afghanistan. During the last 40 years, I think this is the first time that the regional international community are on the same page vis-a-vis peace in Afghanistan. Maybe there is a fatigue vis-a-vis Afghanistan and the international community. And we have seen that when in Geneva, this donor conference was held. This time, the donation, what we call it, it was $13 billion for 4 years, 2 billion or 3 billion less than the last donor conference held in Australia. I think it was in Australia and Europe. So there is a fatigue. international community, and this U.S. troop withdrawal. I don't think so that 5,000 or 10,000 matter anymore. The reason is there were time when in Afghanistan more than 120,000 troops, international troops were there. With all the weaponries, modern weaponries, and as I said, and the license to kill anywhere they want, they were having that authorization to go and act. So 5,000 is, I think it is nothing. 10,000 is nothing. The
But
fact
will,
is
I mean,
that
I'm not saying whether 5,000 or even 5, will it be acceptable to the Taliban?
I
Because they
think
want
a
the
lot
troops
of-
out. Foreign troops, no soldier on our soil. That's what they want.
I think that is a maximalist position. Even still, they haven't said that A to Z troops will be taken out. There will be a residual, I think, and they have accepted that certain all the bases will not be closed. I think, and so now they are sitting with the Afghans. The best thing is what Taliban think. That is another thing. This is for the first time that Taliban are now with their own people, and they are talking about their own people, and they are talking about their own land. So take Taliban as a human being. No doubt they have committed a lot of atrocities. They have continued fighting for the last 20 years, but now they are sharing their stories with the people with whom they share their own land, and they are from the same villages to which the Taliban belong, and they are talking of peace for their own land. So I think this position will be definitely changed. Taliban have softened their position since they have started talking with the US administration. So my point is that sitting with each other, who are calling themselves enemies for the last more than 20 years, sitting and sharing the same room for 3 months, I think this is a great achievement by any yardstick. And at the
Or
end
like
of the day,
Hassan, I mean, there's a story in Reuters which says that 2,500 troops would be stationed in Afghanistan after the 15th of January, and 2 larger Afghan bases would be kept by the US military. So you're talking about 2 bases.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, look,
that is what my
this
point.
is-
And this is with the will of
Yes.
the Pentagon. So
Yeah,
if the
it-
same
it's-
ideology continues in the next regime, I mean, let's throw light on that aspect.
Yeah, look, in the US Taliban agreement, all the troops will be pulled out by May 2021.
Yeah.
This is written in the agreement that all the troops, but it is subject to: 1, Taliban will set with the Afghan government; 2, Taliban will reduce violence; 3, Taliban will make an understanding or a framework with their
Okay.
with their opponent. So definitely, if these targets are achieved, so there will be no need of US troops staying there. And I think even Taliban will not object. Look, since September 2020, when the agreement was signed between Taliban and the and the US government, not a single attack happened on the US forces in Afghanistan. So I think Taliban have demonstrated that what they have committed, they have acted upon it. So now if Taliban agree with the Afghan leadership over a ceasefire, and they agreed to stop this violence or to no more fighting, so definitely I think then it will be more easy for them to continue talking for a longer period. But the problem is of violence. I think that is the main elephant in the room. Once that elephant is get out of the room, that violence is reduced, that violence is stopped, ceasefire is committed. So the US troops, whether it is 1,000 or 10,000 or 20,000, I think that is a matter of least concern for the Afghan, including Taliban. For me, as I see the changing behavior of Taliban, the changing, I think their softening of their position since the day they started interacting with since the day they started interaction with the international community, and particularly with their own Afghans. Faisal, there are stories, personal stories with Taliban sharing with their own Afghan interlocutors, and the Afghan leadership sharing their own stories with the Taliban. So it is a human nature that both are sitting together, and some even talk to me, some delegates, that there were very emotional scene when both start sharing their story, personal stories, family stories with each other, because most of them, in majority, they belong to, like the Stanakzai is leading from one side and a Stanakzai is leading from another side. So they are coming from the same families in the same villages. So definitely the position is getting softened. And this understanding means that both the party means business, both the party are very much serious in the peace project.
All right, all right. Now, one last quick comment, sir, and that is about the role of the non-state actors and their future. Obviously, Afghanistan, Taliban, primarily those Taliban, they do not have any design beyond the borders of Afghanistan. So they want peace in their country, and they want the foreign troops to be out, and they want to live. That's what exactly they have in their mind. But when you talk about Daesh, or you talk about ISIS, or you talk about Hizbul Lahrar, or you talk about Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, and there's a long list. Now, these non-state actors are again funded by the Indians, sponsored and used against the Afghan people, against the Taliban, as well as Pakistan. What would be their future, sir?
See,
Because things have sorted out, things have been sorted out in the Middle East as well.
Donald Trump has been saying, I'll take everybody out, I'll take the US troops out of Afghanistan by May 2021, but CIA and Pentagon have been resisting this. They couldn't, because he's the head of the armed forces. He's the supreme commander, but now with him going, there'll be a change in the policy. That is precisely why the Americans would like to have some kind of presence in the region, so that these non-state actors cannot use Afghanistan as the staging ground. Taliban themselves may not have the capacity. Remember, DGISPR also talked about the capacity issue, because Pakistan has been pointing out to Afghanistan, it's the issue of capacity. The Afghan government, the current government, even with all the international support, maybe there is less international support or less financial support from the outside world to the Taliban, because there might be still less legitimacy for them as compared to the present.
Obviously, makes sense.
So, there will be issues of capacity, and Afghan government, whether it is a coalition of the existing setup and the Taliban, or the Taliban alone, will have capacity issues. So they will not be able to handle the non-state actors by themselves. That is why some form of presence of an international military force may be confined to their bases, but available readily to counter the menace of these non-state actors who can derail the peace process and derail the stability of the region, is very important, and I think that is why these forces are going to stay. However, if the two forces, the Taliban and the government, come on the same page and iron out their issues, I think the non-state actors will have to pack up their bags and go elsewhere, because they will not find the kind of welcoming atmosphere that they used to get in the past. So they also will have to think about moving to some other location maybe. And there are plenty of places where they can go and find their staging grounds. So, and probably our enemy thinks that if they pack up from here, the next place is Kashmir. So that's why they want to keep them here. They keep funding them, because they know if they upstick from here, the next they will go is to Kashmir. That's what the Indians don't want, and that's why they want them here. Continue to foment violence in Afghanistan and keep feeding them.
And I mean, it is a fact that the kind of money Indians are spending on them and affording them to carry out all
500 billion and 700 billion.
Just imagine.
Ridiculous amount of money.
I mean, this is crazy. But anyway, General, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your participation. And thank you very much, Hassan Khan Saab, for your presence as well. It was lovely to see you. Anyway, that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you, inshallah, again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.